Welcome to the ZiaWoolz Studio Buzz podcast, episode 60. My name is Doug and I am coming to you from Albuquerque in the beautiful desert of New Mexico. This is where I live with my family, and this is also where I dye the yarns for my little yarn company, ZiaWoolz. If you have come to this space before, you will have noticed that I have not recorded in my usual rhythm, and I'm overdue almost by a week, and the reason is just really that recording a podcast the way I normally do seemed too trivial in light of the recent events in America and in light of the killing of George Floyd and of the events that followed. And I have struggled with that quite a bit. I cannot not say anything about it, and I want to, but on the other hand, I'm the person who never wants to tell you how to live your life. I've spoken about that before. So, but this is too deep to be quiet, and too deep to not talk about it. So I wanted to, I just want to tell you that this space is not in any way for any form of racism, and if you are a little bit like me, I hope you can honor that, and maybe also try to inform yourself, talk to your African American friends and ask them about things, and just come out of this a little bit smarter, and to be the change or a part of the change that we all hope for in this country. And I wanted to say that there are podcasts. I'm not a very eloquent person, and I did not grow up in America, so I did not grow up living in a country where racism was so incredibly common when I was young. I know stories from my husband and of course from my friends, but I cannot even exempt the country where I'm from racism. And I have to say that I'm really pretty impressed by all the protests that are happening in Germany right now, and in Europe and in the world, in support of this movement to make a change. Yeah. I have, I recorded the German version of this podcast, as you probably know, a few days ago, and it really, it was, I'm not trying to make this about me, okay? Please don't get me wrong, but it took me a few days to really, to move on to the English one. And, but I did want to leave you with two podcasts where I thought, wow, you have really said some incredible things. And if you want to hear a little more eloquently phrased statements, and also you know, put a little bit of heart and soul into paying attention, I would say go and watch Avid Ned's or Sarah of Crafting with Compassion. And Sarah brought a little bit of peace to my heart because she actually celebrated a tea ceremony, which I thought was such a beautiful gesture, and yeah, it really touched me and moved me, and yes. And I will take a short break now because there is no transition from this to talking about knitting, and I will see you in a second for you. Okay. I do have a beautiful new project that you haven't seen yet, which I started on June 1st, because June is Pride Month, and so I wanted to join the celebration of diversity with my participation in a rainbow sock cal. It is a German knit along, but I'm sure if you find that perfect rainbow yarn in your stash, you can join probably other knit alongs that are happening in English-speaking countries right now. And in the meantime, I wanted to tell you that mine is called Regenbogen Sockencal, which is rainbow sock cal. So I have joined this knit along with a German podcasting friend who said essentially that you can join the knit along with just about any colorful yarn from stash, or I mean that you shop for. And the one that I picked is actually, at first I thought I wanted to use a yarn that I had already started a pair of socks with, and that also would have been fine. But then all of a sudden I remembered this super special yarn that was a gift from my dear friend Pam, who lives in Washington State. And I put this yarn away after she gifted it to me, and I thought the perfect time will come for a project with this yarn, and indeed so it is right now. I am so enthusiastic about knitting with it, and I want to show you the ball of yarn first. And have you ever seen such a rainbow, right? Isn't this absolutely beautiful, colorful? Yeah. The yarn is by the company In the Deep UC. Sorry, it's not very pretty, but I had it stuck in the middle of my yarn ball. I've had it in my stash since 2017. Well marinated. So here it is. And you're gonna say, huh? What? You say you love knitting this up, and yet you have only done this little itty bitty bit. Nope, there is more. This is my second sock. Oh gosh, I'm running out of space here. This is sock number 1. Isn't this just so pretty? I love what it did when I worked on the gusset after the heel. One side has the orange and the yellow, and the other one has all the other colors. I have made this in a size for my daughter, hopefully, because she doesn't know, because she would never think that I would make something like this for her. But I've talked about that before. She's such a white, black, gray, neutral color person. But I'm thinking socks, everything goes, right? So when she goes off to college in fall, I'm sure she's going to be happy to have a pair of colorful socks that remind her of her colorful, crazy mother. And I am knitting these with size 2.5 millimeter needles. And what I usually do, because I do a ribbing and then a stockinette leg, I mark the beginning of my heel with a little progress keeper to keep track of that. And then I also, these are my, as usual, very detailed notes that I keep, because you need detailed notes for a vanilla sock about this detailed, right? Yeah, there's not much to keep note. I usually write down how many rows of ribbing, how many rows of stockinette, and then how long my heel is. I didn't even write down, oops, how long I made the foot. And I always count rows, and I usually count the rows after the gusset, after the heel gusset. Yeah, I'm always a heel flap girl. So these are my rainbow socks. Very happy with them. What is next? I have to tell you that I did some crochet. I started a new crochet project, and it's kind of like it does not make a lot of sense right now, because I feel like due to the coronavirus, I feel like packaging in the fresh department of veggies and fruit is gonna go towards more plastic rather than, you know, reusable packaging. But I still like reusable. I mean, I wash everything at home, and so I decided to start something which I have wanted to do for quite some time. I am making a bag, a crochet bag, a reusable bag for something like, for example, apples. So this is hopefully going to go a little bit, going to be a little bit larger. And what I am using is this yarn which I found in my stash. It's a fine crochet yarn, and I used up another one for the base of this, and now I'm just going straight up. What I do is I am doing a double crochet and then 2 single crochets. Is that called? Yes, I think it's called single. The term is single crochet. And I am going in spirals, so there's no rounds. And when I started, I believe, as far as I remember, that I started with 8 or so double crochets, and then I transitioned out of the circle right away to go in a spiral. However, I feel like I know what I did, so I know I try to kind of keep track to repeat a certain pattern per round, and that is that in the second round I doubled every second double crochet. In the third round I doubled every third double crochet, and so on until I felt my base was big enough, which also was just when that lighter color ended. It's not exact, so I did not pay attention to really make it kind of like a round, but kind of only roughly. Yes, and I will keep going until I have enough, until it's big enough for about 5 to 7 apples, I would say. And then I'm just gonna, yeah, add a string to pull it together on top. That's my crochet project. And then I'm gonna have to find out how the stores even deal with that. I feel like I once heard that they need to see the bag before you use it, but I'm just gonna ask when I go to Sprouts, for example, one of the places where I shop. And then I continued on a project which lives in my bag from Debbie REECE. Debbie and Amy do a mystery knit along for every Mother's Day. I want to say it was the 3rd one this year, but I'm sure I'm wrong. It was at least the 4th. And I may be even wrong with that. But the mystery knit along starts usually in April, and as usual I was late to the party, even though, I mean, I don't do mystery knit alongs anyways, but I say, pretty please, can I get a sneak peek? And so I knew I was gonna want to make it, but I didn't want to do, I was just not ready at the time. And then all of a sudden it hit me, I had the perfect yarns, and I started the shawl, as you may know, about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and this is where I am right now. I am using 3.5 millimeter needles, ZiaWoolz, and I use, the yarn I use is ZiaWoolz Sundancer in the colorway I Lost My Heart in Winslow, which was the goodie bag colorway for the knitting retreat this February. And I had dyed up this turquoise-ish lighter blue, which was a non-repeatable color. And then I thought, this is perfect in combination with that, and it's gonna make a perfect shawl. So this is steady progress, and I really am very impressed, and I said that last time already, with the beginning of the shawl, because I'm one of those people, I don't like it too much when in the top center of the shawl, of course it's going to go this way, when I have a little mountain there. But I can see how Debbie put so much effort into not getting this, and I'm sure as soon as it's blocked, it will not be there at all. And I mean, you can barely see it right now. I love that, Debbie. That's really very, very, very cool. And if you are interested in this pattern, it is called A Mother's Prayer. And Debbie was so amazing, and the pattern is available for free on Ravelry because we're going through these rough times and we all need a little bit of something comforting that's maybe not too pricey right now because, well, I think we all know why. And so it's really a nice pattern that's going to be available, that is available and will be for free on Ravelry, A Mother's Prayer. And I've said that last time already, that for me it's not going to be a Mother's Day gift from my mother because I had already planned another shawl for her that I have started, and I showed you. I just didn't bring it because I haven't worked on it now. But I called this project A Prayer for Humanity in light of the current events. And so it's a very nice project to work on and to send out some love and light from my heart with every stitch into the world. Does that make any sense? I hope so. It does to me. And that is my Prayer for Humanity shawl. I have also started the sweater that I told you about. The gnats are coming, oh my gosh. And the sweater is the one that I was telling you about, which I am knitting with 3 yarns held together. This is an alpaca blend that I only had for a short time this winter. They're all ZiaWoolz. I didn't say that. This one is also a goodie bag colorway from almost 3 years ago when we had the Isabel Kramer knitting retreat. I mean the Knit New Mexico retreat with Isabel Kramer teaching a class here. What a treat, yes. And this is the colorway Lila Lu Love. This one was a one-of-a-kind dark minty green. And then as soon as I first saw and touched this yarn quality, I knew that I wanted to carry it, and I ordered a small amount now to try it and test it out. And I'm every bit in love with it as I expected. This is an 80-20 Surrey alpaca silk blend. It comes in 50-gram skeins, and it has about, the other day I said 345, but that's not right. I think it's about 325 yards. It is, if you wonder how soft this is, pretty much as soft as it looks, unless you are allergic to alpaca, which I know some people are. If you like alpaca, this is better than what you like. It's just amazing. So I have 4 skeins of each one of these, and this is my second skein for all of them. And now I'm going to show you where I am, and I'm talking about my Il Grande. I can't say an Italian thing in English, so I'm going to say Il Grande Favorito. I would say it's Italian. I hope I'm not making that up. And this is where I am on this Isabel Kramer pattern. I've been wanting to make this for, I want to say, several years. And what really made me want to cast on ASAP was that I saw this sweater on someone in a German podcast. What I loved about the design, I mean, I love top down anyway, I love raglan, but this is so very much what I like with the large neckline. I don't wear turtlenecks ever, and I don't like things being too close to my neck. So I know this is going to get a ribbing. Probably, I haven't read ahead, but I'm sure it does eventually. But it's still going to be a very generously shaped neckline, and I'd rather, you know, if I want to be warm, I'm gonna wrap my neck in a shawl anyways. I have a few of them, as I know you do for sure as well. All knitters do, right? So right now I'm at a point where I will put it on another needle to see how long it is. I know that in the back there is a little bit of shaping with short rows, so I believe that the back will be longer, but I think I could already be there. I already tried it on before I split for the sleeves, and if that looks small to you, I do want to say a few things about the size of this. My gauge was off initially. That's why I'm using 3 yarns held together, and also this is, excuse me for 1 second. But my stitch count was still not perfect, and so I chose the 3rd largest size for this, and I am using 7mm needles, so I went up 0.5 millimeters in size of the needles compared to what she gives in the pattern instructions. She makes a few suggestions on what you can modify and change if you feel like it's not right for you. If you try it on and you say, hey, I need more length here, I need wider sleeves and whatnot. But I thought when I tried it on, this is a good size for me. And the length right now, oh wow, yes, I think I'm really there. Yep, so I think that's going to be one thing for me to do today, to make sure and try it on, and then start the final section on the body, and then I'm just missing 2 sleeves, which is great. I had a friend visiting the other day, which I thought was such a treat. She said, can I come by for a little bit? And we chatted yarn and knitting and just really the things that we love so much, and that was really so nice. And we were talking about yarn, and I went to my stash box here and remembered something that I wanted to cast on, and I thought, well, I'm just going to pull out the yarn right now, but I'm going to finish the other shawl first, the Prayer for Humanity. But then my friend said, you know, one of the things, I told her that, and then she said, you know, one of the things that I told myself is, while this whole craziness is going on with the pandemic, I am allowing myself to cast on whatever I want, whenever I want. And I thought, gosh, you have a good point, and that's exactly what I will do. And so that night I cast on that new shawl that I have, that I picked, where I picked the pattern on Ravelry. And I need to tell you a few things about this, because this morphed very quickly into a knit along. And what I need to tell you is that I had just then discovered that pattern on Ravelry. I don't know why it caught my eye or if someone favorited it. I have told you before that I have a lot of friends on Ravelry, and I like that because it allows me to look at the friend activity feed, where I sometimes go through pages and pages of what my friends do, what they favorite, what they've queued, what yarn they just stashed, and all these things. So if that is something that you maybe like as well, I would love for you to friend me on Ravelry, and I'm putting my name on here. I'm Paperdag. And so I had seen this pattern, and I have done something which I hardly ever do. I bought the pattern immediately. What I normally do, and feel free to browse there, because I think I'm always finding some pretty cool patterns. I have a queue of 800 patterns where I am well sorted. I have cardigans, sweaters, shawls, and more, and subcategories of lace shawls. But when I found this one, I bought the pattern immediately, which I couldn't even recall when I've done that the last time, because I thought it was so incredibly beautiful. And I will pull up a picture to show you what I'm talking about and how it looks like. I hope I can show you without the reflection. Well, you have a little bit of a reflection, but I think you can see what makes this such a special pattern. And it's airy, it's lacy, it's gorgeous. So I also, I couldn't understand why there's only 8 projects on Ravelry. No idea. So thank you to my friend who told me, yeah, why not cast on everything right now? Because I picked the yarn from my bin that night. I took it in the house and I cast on that same night, with the result of a few rows in, me realizing that's not the yarn that I wanted to use. It's a green, but it's not the green that I wanted to use. And so I'm going to show you this beginning. So I was not too far in when I noticed my mistake, and I pulled the needles and got the right yarn the next day. So, but that was it. I know it's a beautiful green, but it's not the right green. I didn't want this. This is a Cascade Heritage sock yarn, I believe. And now I'm gonna completely frog it. I just kept it to show you. So I wanted to use the yarn that I had started the meristem shawl with a few months ago, and that I ripped back, and so I got that out, and it's also a beautiful green, but it's a very different, and it's so, we talked about that. I talked about that already back then. How different can light Greensby, right? So this is the one that I am working with now, and it is a hedgehog fibers yarn that was yet again a gift from a dear friend, and that's why my project is called Madame Dizou, after that friend. And I have 2 skeins of this. They're both already wound up, and this is where I am right now. It looks tiny, but I have already made quite a bit of progress, I am thinking. It's just hard to show. Oh my gosh, I just love it so much. I decided to use 4mm needles and not the 5mm ones that are suggested in the pattern. That's just me. That's the fabric that I like. Oh, the colorway, by the way, I think is sorry, I had to sneeze all of a sudden. Cutting that out. So the colorway is Skinny Dip, by the way. Okay, what can I tell you about this? So one thing is, so I have the 4mm needles that I chose, and you start this with a garter tab, but it's so funny, you know, I started reading the pattern, and when DANNA talks about this, about, you know, in the first page on how you set up and all, she already says, if you, something like, if you don't like a garter tab, then that's fine, you just can start this different way. And the way she worded that was so funny, and it made me laugh, and I thought, oh, I adore that kind of humor when you can, you know, just see the funny things in life and take it all with humor. I like that. Yeah. And I have decided to make a knit along for this beautiful shawl. It's called the Madame Papillon, as I said. And if you would like to join in and knit your own Madame Papillon, please join the ZiaWoolz group on Ravelry, and I have already started a thread. I have a few, the title is in English, however, because like, as you know, I have German viewers also, and some of them are not comfortable with English, so they may write in German, but it doesn't matter. I will be excited for you to join me with this knit along, and I have something super, super cool and exciting to tell you, because I just got a message from the designer who wrote me, and it's actually, the message is in the thread, in the knit along thread, and she said that she was going to go ahead and offer a free pattern to everyone who posts their finished Madame Papillon shawl on Ravelry. She would offer the person another one of her patterns for free. And I'm thinking, it warmed my heart. I thought that was so incredibly generous. And I have yet to thank her, because I read that and then I came out here to record, but I will of course get in touch with her and thank her for that offer that I will pass on to you, and I will also of course in the end figure out something as a little winning prize for everybody who participates. This is Madame Papillon. So I talked about this, I talked about that yarn, talked about the crochet and that, my socks. And then I have one, excuse me, don't want to step on my yarn. I have one more project that I have worked on, which is something that I have started with hand spun yarn a few weeks ago. And I have picked it back up again after a little break. And I told my friend when she visited a few days ago, I told her about this yarn. And I said, well, it's a brown hand spun yarn. And I know exactly what she was probably thinking at that point. And I said, yeah, you're going to say, what? You're knitting brown yarn? That's not so much you. But you're going to understand when I tell you what makes this yarn so special. And I just wish for you, I wish that I could hand it to you to touch and get the same comforting experience that I'm having when I work with this yarn. I have, and it lives in here, the project. I have spun this a while ago, and I had talked about it before. The fibers came from a D-stash. So I can own, this is a once in a lifetime thing. I had only this one batch of that yarn. It was already washed, but it was not carded. And some of the locks were dyed. A lot of them, I mean, the majority of the dyed ones were red. And there was also a little bit of blue, but I kind of, when I looked at it the other day, I couldn't see any blue. But I'm pretty confident that there was blue in it also somewhere. And this is my brown ball of yarn that I'm working with. It looks to me very lacy, but when I checked the yardage, I thought it was more like a light fingering. The reason why I love this so much is what it does to my hands. It has a very light smell of sheep, nothing overpowering. You really got to put your nose to it. But I want to show you something with this little skein here. That was left over on the bobbin that I plied and kept in a little small skein. And I thought that was going to show you a lot about this yarn. Wait for it. I'm pulling. Is that crazy or what? How much elasticity is in this little skein of yarn. Don't know what it is. What sheep? So I worked, I'm working from I started off with a pattern which is called ELFENSTILLE. So I apologize, it's a German pattern, it's free on Ravelry, but you could essentially, if you have a similar fine hand spun yarn, you can essentially use any kind of pattern in a shape that you like. I mean, you just adjust it to your yarn and pick the needle size that's needed for that yarn. In this case, I started off with a garter tab, and I also saw this mentioned on a German podcast, and the woman had already made several of this shawl. And what she said about it is that the way it's increased, you don't just do the 2 increases in the center spine, by the center spine, but you also increase on the right side 2 stitches here, which in the end is going to make your shawl longer, but the triangle is not going to come down so deep as it would if you just had 1 increase on the side, per side, of course. I really, it's so hard to describe what's the comfort in this project, and I think it's really the feel of this, and that's also the reason why I have not added any kind of patterning. I'm just knitting, because the original pattern tells you what to do, how to start. I think it looks kind of like lines that come from the spine. I didn't even need that. It was just so wonderful to make this with stockinette. So eventually, of course, once I get to more towards the bottom, I will add a lace pattern. I don't know if I'm going to use the one that's given in the original pattern, or if I'm going to go through my books and pick one from them, but that's yeah, that's the plan right now. I just see that there's, of course I can't read that. I know I'm using Hiya sharp needles, and I thought they were 3.75 ones. I just, yeah, picked these. Normally I use the Chagu red lace, but grabbed a different kind here. Yep. Very excited. Fairy tales. So magical things happening with that project in this bag. Now on to spinning. I have finished the pinkish purplish yarn, and ooh, sorry, crinkle crinkle. Sadly, there's a problem. You know, I've had 2 skeins done when I recorded last, and you probably can see this better than I can right now. From my side, it's kind of dark and I can't tell the difference much, but you probably see that this small last skein and the second to last one, they're darker and more blue and less pink. That is not the only problem, and that is my fault alone, because, excuse me, I did not make a control card when I started spinning. In fact, what happened was I had spun quite some thin, fine, lacier yarns before, and I thought, well, let's just spin something that's not quite that thin. And I think what happened was that I made this my mantra. I started spinning kind of fairly finely, and then I kept thinking, not quite that fine, not quite that fine, not quite that fine. And so I gradually got thicker, and of course when you combine two thin yarns you get one that's maybe more or less significantly heavier than what you initially started with. My very last skeins are the ones that I spun first, so it doesn't matter in the end what the order is, but I did want to tell you the different. Why is there food on this? It looks like a piece of pasta or something. So I'm going to tell you the yardage and the weight of the different skeins. The small one's not going to matter that much. That's 28 grams with 52 yards. And this is how I write it down. I write down when I spun it, where the fibers came from, what the total of fibers amount is, which was in this case 1 pound. Got it at the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival in 2018, and it is skein number 5 of 5 skeins. And I just cut an index card in half because I have a lot of those and I like using them. They always come in pretty colors, I find. So let's see. Skein 1, 205 yards, 88 grams. Skein 2, 180 for 95. So that's already less yardage with a little bit more weight, 5 grams, 7 grams. Then 257 yards for 108 grams. And 210 yards for 89, where if you remember the very first skein, that's pretty similar. That's 110 for 98 compared to 205 for 88 grams. So pretty good on these two. But altogether, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this, and I've already got some nice comments after I showed them on the German podcast. People suggested, hey, put them into one project and use them up using the helix method. Don't know yet. I think if I had something in mind, a garment, a specific garment, then I may give that a try. In the meantime, they will go back into their little baggie and wait patiently until I come up with the right project. I also thought, it's just such a shame to, when it's a whole, such a big quantity of the same yarn, because I thought maybe I can put some of it in the shop that really doesn't go together, because maybe some folks would like to knit a hap and use hand spun for the edge, because yep, it's still up there. Didn't I tell you that? Didn't I say that I was probably going to keep that up for quite some time? It's just so pretty, and I'm not using it right now. It's too warm. And I have, talking about haps, because I've spun up 2 other small sample skeins where I thought, oh, perfect for a hap. Maybe I have to make another one, right? So my 2 other hand spun yarns are these here. And you see I made a different tag here because I wanted to, I added a little tag. This is not the final weight, and oh yes, no, it's not. I haven't even weighed these, but I marked them already while they were drying after washing, because visually they are very similar, but I wanted to be able to tell them apart, because what I did was this. Let me show you. I spun these up from drum carded bats. For both skeins, I used a gray as a base. I call it a base. I put a gray base on my drum carder, and then I used I think you call that the space dyed spinning top. I think it's a merino, not dyed by me, but I thought about using that for yarn for a cardigan, but then it didn't work out the way I thought. I hoped it would, and so I still have that. I had that sitting there, and I thought, well, I'm going to try that with these two different bases. This one is from a local fiber mill. It's a blend of Romney and Angora with the merino, the dyed merino. And the other one is a Shetland, natural Shetland gray, as I said, from Ashland Bay, one of my suppliers. And I was just curious because while I like the Romney Angora blend from my local mill, I knew it was probably not going to be a smooth spin, not as smooth as something that's more commercially prepared. And I mean, of course, this is also commercially prepared, but at times, I don't know what they do differently. Maybe this Shetland comes even from New Zealand. I just really don't know, but it's not as smooth as the Shetland. And you can tell when you look at the two skeins, because the one, I spun them up directly one after the other. So in this case, it couldn't be me not having a control card that causes differences. But let me come closer. Top is the Romney Angora, bottom is the Shetland. And one thing that I noticed, other than the fact that I was able to spin much more smoothly on this one, it's that I like the coloring better on this one, and especially in spots like here, where I have the light blue and the orangey yellow color. I do like that better than the burgundy, which is more dominant in this one, which also, of course, gives me ideas. Oh, there's another spot with the light blue and that golden yellow. Yeah. So that's a good point. So maybe I'm going to spin a sweater's quantity. I blend myself a sweater quantity of this with that yellow and with the light blue dyed and blended in. Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, I'll see. I'll see what happens. These were just samples, and I have done more sampling because I was a little bit restless after that spinning project with that pink. I call it pink, maybe more purple with the lime green. So I went through my spinning fiber stash and I pulled out something that you've seen a year ago because I purchased this beauty at Albuquerque Fiber Arts Fiesta, and it is a blend, a 50-50 blend of merino and silk, and it comes from one of my favorite fiber dyers, Redfish Dye Works. Whenever they come to Albuquerque, I'll buy one braid, and in this case I had the hardest time picking a colorway, but I still did want to pick two, because I feel like sometimes you have to pick just one to keep it special, you know, and so that was this one. It's just so beautiful. And the way I spin it, and I have spun another one before, is that I spin from the fold, which I do, so I pull from my top, I pull about a fiber's length. I usually put it over my finger, smooth it a little bit, and then I do take my finger out and I hold it like this, and then I start spinning from here. You probably see the fibers, and that's why I can't handle this right now. My fingers are so rough. So I hold it like this and I spin from this long fibers. That's a good way to spin them because they're also very, very slippery. Love this. And I thought either I spin 2 batches or I apply this with, let me show you what else I have, and I am showing you something that I dyed myself 2 years ago or so, and I thought either I apply them together or I spin this and then I spin this, and I can make something 2-colored. And now I am not seeing my little mini skein. What? Oh, I have it on my leg. You probably see the fan, so the fan is blowing everything. So I spun the Redfish Dye Works fibers, spun a little sample of that, but then I was restless. I couldn't really find my piece, and in fact my husband just said, "Dang, you're grumpy and kind of on the edge." So I don't know, do you know that line from Shrek where Donkey says, "I'm a donkey on the edge," and my husband says, "You're a doggy on the edge." Yep, and I didn't argue with him. It's funny because with this, right now it's a combination of what's going on in the world with the virus, and then with these injustices, and you would think that if you have a nice hobby and you don't have to struggle to get by, to get food. I mean, I'm fine, you know. You would be okay, and you have this beautiful hobby, and you live in a place that you love, but still it grinds and grates on you. And yeah, some days are worse than others. That was yesterday, that was why I didn't record yesterday, and today is better. Enough of that. This is just beautiful, but I realized when I was spinning it that I don't really have the patience for something that is more, this would demand a lot of focus from me, and I can do it, but I decided I don't want a very demanding project right now. Also, I most certainly don't want to ruin these beautiful fibers. So this little sample goes back in the bag with the fibers, and it will wait patiently for another time when I am ready to spin it up. Not enough of the sampling. I pulled out something else that I don't even know how I found that the other day, but it's really funny. I have to tell you that a few years ago I found, I came up with this idea. I think it all started in 2013. I ran a lot, and I ran far on the trails up here in the mountains, and I always passed this, I passed this one spot with a huge boulder that had bright green lichen on one side. It's kind of, it's not too common, because I mean, you're in New Mexico, there's not a lot of moisture here. So this was just this exceptionally beautiful rock, big boulder. And then I got the idea, I want to spin yarn like this boulder. And I went out and I tried to find fibers that match my boulder, and I found some fibers from a local farm. Some was natural gray Shetland. Again, let me think. No, that was already, what I meant to say was that was already carded, washed and carded, and came as a bat. The other yarn fibers that I found, I am not 100% sure, because my secretary is not very reliable, as you know. Wink, wink. So but I believe the bright green that I wanted to combine for the lichen, kind of like, was dyed by me. And I'm going to show you these two together. So here's the bat, and here's the bright green. Very, very matchy. And all I have of the gray and the green is in here right now. And then I also found mohair locks that were, ooh, they come apart. They're just washed and uncarded. They're the good mohair. I mean, they don't feel scratchy to me like this. Now, 7 years later, I know it doesn't matter. Once it goes on my body, it's still gonna itch me, sadly. But I brought you the sample that I made back then, and what I did and what I intended to do, and then what I did for the little sample was that I randomly grabbed a handful of locks and a piece of the bat and a piece of the bright green, lime green, spinning the top, and which I believe was Rambouillet. And I spun a small sample, and I knitted a little swatch. It is gorgeous. I still think it's gorgeous, and I especially love stuff like this where the locks are peeking out. It's not an easy spin. It's not one of my favorites, I have to say, because I've spun some other fibers before. I still keep getting itches from this stuff flying around. It's not, you would think, oh, this is not carded, you just take it and da-da-da, you spin it up, but it's not. You have to focus and kind of be slow when you spin. Oh, I just see, I didn't even apply this. Oh, wow. Did singles. Yes, I did. Singles. Love the yarn, but as you know, mohair and me don't go together. So this is not going to be done. However, you will, if you are one of the people who love mohair and who would love to create something like this, I will put this mohair from a local farm into the shop. It's going to take me another about 2 weeks. I have to figure out how to sort this, and probably going to make these little maybe 2-ounce bags or so, and then they will be available in the shop. But give me about 2 weeks. So that was that. And I showed on the German podcast some yarn that was not, that I said was going to go in the shop, which I have already sold. In the meantime, there's also this, that, yet again, it'll take me a few days because I'm going to have to put the shop on hold for a little bit, because believe it or not, we're going to travel. So again, about 2 weeks, and this will be in the shop for those of you who love their greens. That's shop news, the mohair and this, but I haven't shown you yet the last thing, what I meant to tell you. So from the rock yarn that I did back then, I went to carding yet another bat, for which I used only the gray Shetland fibers, which were already carded, as I told you, and the green. And I made a new bat, and I spun it up, and this is how it looks like. It has nothing to do with rock yarn anymore, because it's not rock gray anymore. Yeah, it was a fun little sample spin that I enjoyed, and now I will have to think about what I actually really want to do, because I would like it more gray, I think. I love how it's probably a fingering. So I love the weight that I spun, and I even called it, I said rock yarn. Drum carded 2 bats. I carded the bats twice, and I got 42 grams and 120 yards. So this yet again is a journey, and it will continue, and I will let you know where this journey takes me. Ooh, a green hap? That would be pretty awesome, I think. Gosh, So many ideas, so little time. Okay. I think that was it. I mean, I've been talking long enough. You're probably tired of this already, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I will be back to this space in about 2 weeks, roughly, and I hope this does find you well and healthy and enjoying what you're working on. And until I see you again, I wish you happy knitting. Bye.